saving money to buy a home is a big part of the entire process. And all of us could use some extra expertise in that particular area. Now, there are a lot of systems and coaches when it comes to personal finance, and I love today's special guest, Andrew Giancola. He's from mastermoney.co and the Personal Finance Podcast. This dude isn't about budgeting yourself to death or preaching some get-rich-quick scheme. Andrew offers practical wealth-building tactics and is passionate about reducing the stress and anxiety with budgeting and saving money so that you can build the life that you want. Enjoy this enlightening conversation.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the #1 resource for first-time homebuyers.
What's happening to How to Buy a Homies? I am super excited today. You know, I'm always out there researching and looking and trying to find different people to bring on the show that can bring a different perspective for you, especially now when we're in this economy where we need help. Well, Andrew Giancola is amazing. And I talked to Andrew and he said he would come on the show. He's from Master Money. I looked him up, checked it out. We had a chance to chat. He wants to help people discover how to save, invest, and grow money so you can build generational wealth. My favorite thing on your website, Andrew, is that money doesn't grow on trees, but that doesn't mean money's not easy to grow.
Yeah.
I love
Absolutely. That is the best.
So,
and David, that's awesome.
Yeah. So give us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into questions on what people can do to succeed as the middle class sure feels like it's getting squeezed right now.
Absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for having me on here. And I am Andrew Giancola. I'm the host of the Personal Finance Podcast, founder of Master Money, which is a financial education platform. And overall, my entire goal, and this is kind of why I started everything, was I wanted to create 1 million millionaires. And so I want to empower people. I want to give people hope. And I want to help people as much as I possibly can around their finances. I want to reduce anxiety. I want to reduce stress for them. And that is the most powerful thing for me. So this is my passion. This is what I love talking about. And when it comes to buying a home, I have helped so many different friends. I actually have my real estate license in Florida, and I have helped so many different friends go out and buy a home. And I really just love this conversation that we're going to have.
That's so exciting. And we're going to get into the real estate side of things. I definitely want to get into that. One of the things that I want to talk with you about is just kind of a lot of people come to me and will figure out their options. And the next conversation is finances. I don't want people to put all their eggs in one basket. I want people to always be thinking. My favorite thing that you talk about is the SWAN. Explain what the SWAN idea is to people.
So the SWAN is this idea where I want you to reduce stress and anxiety around money. So we call it the sleep well at night number. And this is a number that you come up with where you put aside your emergency fund. So if you've never heard of what an emergency fund is, this is basically a rainy day fund. So if something comes up where you get stressed out, or you had, your car breaks down, or something breaks in your house, or you have an issue or a medical emergency, then you have this emergency fund in place to have cash on hand in order to take care of those specific emergencies. And so for most people, most financial gurus out there are going to say, oh, go ahead and save 3 months of expenses so that you have enough in your emergency fund. Well, I truthfully think that most people should save at least, at minimum, 6 months of their expenses. And in addition, if you don't feel comfortable with 6 months of expenses, then you can also save up to whatever your SWAN number is. So your sleep well at night number. So for some people, this is 6 months of expenses. Maybe they have a job where they feel as though they can go get another job pretty quickly if they lost their job. And for some people, this is a year's worth of cash. But the SWAN number is going to help reduce your stress and anxiety around money, which is one of the most beneficial things that you can do. And the reason for that is because you're going to make better decisions. You're going to make better choices when it comes to your dollars, and you can spend more wisely. You can invest wisely. And that is the most powerful thing overall.
I'm so glad that you said that. And that's the reason why I was so originally attracted to what you're teaching. There's so many financial gurus out there. The old school financial gurus, it was like a drill sergeant. It's my way or the highway. I think now that we're becoming a more mentally aware society, taking care of our mental health a lot more, one of the things that I discover when I talk to people, I mean, you know how it is. When you're selling houses, one partner thinks one thing and one partner thinks another thing. And I'm going, hey, didn't you guys talk about this? So in understanding, what you're saying is that everyone's individual SWAN is different because of everyone's individual risk tolerance and their relationship with money. Is that about right?
That is exactly right. And the reason why I say there is a baseline of 6 months is for most people, if you go out and you've seen this job market right now, like we're talking about, this is a really difficult situation for most people. They're not making enough money. And you see the job market and how difficult it is to go find another job. The 6-month baseline, and you're going to have to work up to this. This is not going to happen overnight. This could take years for you to get to. But having at least a 6-month baseline is going to allow you to ensure that over time, if you lose your job, well, maybe you have to go through a couple rounds of interviews. And then maybe you don't land some of those interviews. And so you have to go back through a few other rounds of interviews. And so this could take you a few months and all the way up to 6 months if you don't have enough cash on hand. And so it's very important to keep that on hand. But secondarily, if you are someone out there who knows, hey, I am going to be able to get a job pretty quickly, you could get away with a little less if you can sleep well at night. But at the same time, for most people, it's going to be 6 months or more. And a lot of people that we teach and a lot of people that we coach, overall, during that time frame, most of them are at 6 months or even a little higher. For business owners, folks like that, a lot of them like to have 9 months on hand. I've noticed for retirees, I've noticed a lot of them even like over a year of cash, just because if the market goes down and they have to dip into their portfolio, instead they'd rather dip into their savings so they don't have the sequence of returns risk. So that's a big portion overall for a lot of folks. So the sleep well at night number is very flexible for a lot of folks, but it really starts with looking at your job. If you lost your job today, how long would it take you to go find another job? Because at a minimum, you need some cash on hand just to take care of any emergency in life. If your car breaks down, if your roof has an issue, any of that kind of stuff. But then beyond that, if you did lose your job, how long would it take you to find another job? So that's really where it comes from. And I want people to reduce their stress and anxiety around money. And this is where it starts.
It's such a great theory. And I really appreciate that you're sharing that and coaching people with it. One of the things, since I've been doing real estate for 20 years and helping people, and over the last 10 years, while I've been here on the podcast, there's been a lot of people that give me the, hey, boomer. By the way, I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X, everybody. I'm 55. Leave me alone. But I've been hearing a lot of people that I don't want to sacrifice. I want to live my life in my 20s. I want to travel. I don't want to wait, have all that money. What do you tell the people who are living that FOMO, YOLO mentality lifestyle as far as what they can do to do some investing to secure their future while they still get to live their life?
I hear this all the time as well, David. And this is the big thing that I try to teach people as much as possible is you can do both. So I spent time in my 20s where I was not making much money. In fact, when I started, I was making $30,000 per year. And I quickly realized, oh, shoot, I'm in my entry-level corporate job as a financial analyst, making $30,000 per year. I am living paycheck to paycheck right now. And there was a moment in time where I went to fill up my tank of gas and I did not have enough money in my checking account in order to fill up that tank of gas. And so this moment was a moment that was really rock bottom for me. And so what I did was I said, hey, I'm going to take ownership overall. I want to do more with my life. I want to be able to spend more of my time and my energy doing things that I love. I want to travel more. I want to spend more on some of my hobbies. I like to golf. I like to do all these other things. And so I want to spend more on stuff. And for me specifically, I realized, okay, I got to put together a plan in order to create this dream life that I've always wanted. So we call this an exercise of going through what your dream life is. So I want you to prioritize a list of different things that you really, really want. Maybe it's to buy your first house. Maybe it is to go out and spend more time traveling. A lot of people really want to prioritize traveling. Maybe you want to reduce the amount of hours that you're working every single week. Maybe you just want to go and spend a little extra time being able to, do whatever hobby it is, whether it's fishing, whether it's yoga, whether it's whatever that stuff is, whatever you're interested in. I want you to list out your priorities. And we are going to figure out a way to create a spending plan that allows us to prioritize those things. See, what a lot of people don't realize is spending your money is a skill. It is not something we are taught. And for most people, we are very bad at it if we just rely on our own willpower. So instead, if we can intentionally spend our dollars and put them towards the things we value, but cut back on things that we don't value, that is going to change everything for us. One of my good friends, Paul Pant, says, you can afford anything, you just can't afford everything. And so when you look at spending this way, this is one of the best things that you can do, is you have these priorities in place. Let me give you an example of this, is when you are someone who is working in the corporate world, for example, and let's say you go out to lunch every single day and you go out to eat. Well, if you go out to lunch every single day and you're not really enjoying your time, in fact, you're kind of sitting alone, it's not networking with coworkers or anything, you're just kind of not enjoying this whatsoever. Well, instead, if you took that out of the equation, and you started to pack your lunch every day, saved yourself $20 every single day, well, all of a sudden, you have a good chunk of change that you can start allocating towards your priorities, towards what you want to do. Maybe you want to travel more. Maybe you want to invest in your financial future and you want to buy your freedom. That's a big thing a lot of people want to do is they want to retire one day. They want to spend more time with their family. And so figure out what your spending priorities are. And then I want you to figure out what are the things that you're spending a lot of money on that really do not matter to you. And this is going to be the big unlock. And this was the big unlock for me because then I reduced my spending in areas I didn't care about. I spent more on things that I love. And then here's the big key is if you are still living paycheck to paycheck, you feel like you can't get to that next step, the key is to focus on growing your income. Your income is the largest lever that you can pull in order to change your financial situation. Now, that's easier said than done. So there's a number of different things that you can do in order to increase your income, things like side hustles, things like learning how to negotiate your salary at your day job, things like job switching, where people on average make 20% more when they actually switch job. Loyalty doesn't pay anymore. And so these types of things are things that you can go out and do to increase the gap. The gap is the difference between your income and your expenses. And once you grow that gap, you can live this dream life that you've always wanted. And so the only way to grow that gap is to increase that income or decrease expenses. I don't want you to have to decrease expenses for a very long period of time. Instead, I would rather you increase your income so you can spend more on your priorities and live the life that you want. That is our overall goal. And this is a mindset shift. This is a mindset change for most people. And once they get this and once they grasp this, all of a sudden they have that aha moment and everything changes for them.
It's the aha moments that you create are so... It's the things that I'm trying to let people understand because when people come buying a house, guess what we're talking about? Finances. But I love spending money as a skill. And I think that people just assume they're going to do it a certain way and it's going to be fine. And then they get a little bit of education and suddenly they feel like budgeting is a bad word and it's all depriving. It's all deprivation to themselves. It's just taking stuff away. And when you understand that it's a skill, and I really appreciate the fact that you go into the income factor. I don't think, I think a lot of financial gurus, especially the older ones, they come from the 30-year at a job, loyalty, get a gold watch and a pension. And that's not the way things work right now. So when do you like people to start having this mindset be part of who they are?
It is really right when you start working, or right when you start making money, it is transforming the way that you think about money. Because what most people do is when they start their career, when they start their job, I wish there was some sort of training for people when they start their job at every single company in this country, which would be maybe even beforehand, like college or high school. We wish this was taught across the board. But this is something where I wish everybody understood this, because if you understand this from the get-go, then what you can do is you can transform your financial life. If you are in your 20s right now, you have the most valuable asset of all, which is time. And time can absolutely change your financial life if you understand it. So there is something we have called the Wealth Builders Matrix. And the Wealth Builders Matrix is basically, if you invested your money right now, based on how old you are, how much is every single dollar worth? Well, for someone who is like 18, 19, 20, 21, every single dollar they invest is worth $80 to $100. Every single dollar. For someone in their 30s, it goes down to like $50. And for someone in their 40s, it goes down even more. And so for those out there who are young, or if you're in the millennial generation, you guys have so much time left for compound interest to start working. And so if you start right away, I don't care if it's a small amount of money, just start getting your finances together, understanding the steps that you need to take, and start to allocate dollars towards your investments. And you made up a great point, because for me specifically, anytime we put the word budget in the title of a podcast episode, it is one of my least downloaded podcast episodes, because nobody wants to budget whatsoever. It is one of those things, I call it a cuss word in the financial industry now, because nobody wants to do it. So we came up with a couple of ideas for this. Well, first, if you absolutely hate that word and you've done it before and you kept failing over and over again, you're like, this just doesn't work for me. Well, here's exactly what we teach. There's two options. One is you could do what we call the reverse budget, where you save off the top. You know how much you're going to save, and you save off the top and you just spend whatever is left over. No spreadsheets, no worrying about, line items or how much you spent on groceries. Instead, you just spend whatever you have left over after you save. This is the pay yourself first method, essentially. Secondarily, though, is we have something called a zero-based budget that is out there. So there's a lot of tools out there that you can use to budget that will help you automatically it will help you automatically look at your transactions. And so when you see those transactions, it will, the data, and now they're using AI now, which is awesome, but it will automatically categorize your transactions for you. And I do something called the 5-minute drill, which in reality takes me about 90 seconds per day. Meaning I log into my budgeting app, I look at the line items to make sure all the transactions are in place, and that's it. And it literally takes me 90 seconds. I do it right before I eat my lunch every day, so it's just a habit in place. And that's how you could do it. If you really want to get granular and you really want to look at the line by line, it's 90 seconds every single day. That is all it takes. It takes about 30 minutes to set up, 90 seconds a day, and that is it. So really, for most people now, in 2026, it really does not take much time to budget anymore. It is one of those things that is automated. And in fact, it is really, really powerful once you see where your dollars are going. So for most people out there, I highly, highly, highly recommend starting immediately once you start making money is understanding the order of operations for your money and moving on from there.
I couldn't agree more. And I don't think, I hate to sound like the old man on the porch yelling at the kids, get off my lawn. But that concept, that idea of what you can do now versus my dad sitting down with me and giving me a spreadsheet and me having to punch everything in every month. It was the fact that you can connect right now and that a budget app is going to just show you where your money is going. This technology has created such an ease that it almost feels like, again, like you said, this should be taught in college or in high school. Hey, learn how to do this. When you have a visualization of where your money is going, maybe it doesn't mean anything to you when you're 19 years old, but when you're 22 and you're thinking about buying a house or you're dating someone, you're thinking about getting engaged and you find out how much a ring's going to cost you, suddenly that visualization is really helpful. Your concepts, they just align and they resonate with me so much. So my audience is here because they want to figure out how to buy a home. And in 2026, interest rates and prices are so high, they're like, dude, I can't afford it. So I spend lots of time discussing creative options for buyers. Before we started recording, you told me that you had just recorded an episode on buying a home, and it's something that you do. What are some of your tips that you're telling people if they're trying to figure out how to find an affordable way to buy a home in this crazy 2026 market?
It is one of those things that I think if you are a home buyer, the power is going to be in your hands going forward because we're seeing a lot of shifts in this market. And if you can get creative on how you buy your house, this can be a very, very powerful methodology. So the first house I ever bought, my first home, was one that I bought in 2014. Now, when I bought this house, again, I was making not much money whatsoever. And when I went out and bought this house, I was looking at all these houses that were flipped, that were completely done. And when I looked at those houses, I realized, oh, shoot, these price tags are just way too high for me. And so what did I do? Instead, I looked for a home that needed cosmetic upgrades. So it didn't have any structural issues, but it needed cosmetic upgrades. And I would go through as many of those houses as I could to try to find one. Well, the house I eventually bought literally had carpet in the kitchen. It had purple walls in the kitchen. It had bathrooms that were outdated. The tile was pink in the bathrooms, which now I think is back in style, but that's neither here nor there. And back then it wasn't. And there was a lot of different things that I just had to go in and renovate, but they were all cosmetic. It needed new AC, needed all those different things. And so when I got to the end, we went and bought this house, and it was the best thing I ever did at that point in time. Because really, even at that point in time, I was like, oh, shoot, well, is the market going to come down at some point? Is this too high right now? And this was back in 2014. And I bought this house. It was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. It was $169,000 when I purchased it. Now, that same exact house, I just looked recently, it's worth like $425 on Zillow. Now, we all know Zillow's whatever, but that's what it's worth right now. And so when I purchased this house, I redid the floors, I redid the kitchen, I painted, I did all this stuff. It didn't cost me that much. It cost me in the end about $20,000, but I got a really, really good deal. And immediately, once I finished some of those upgrades, I had instant equity. And that was a really powerful lesson for me because once I started to do that, I took that into my real estate investing, which is the real reason why I have my license. And a lot of other things that I did was because I was looking at it this way. So one of the areas that I think people could do, now this doesn't work in every market in 2026, but if there are houses in your area that everybody's just passing by because they need cosmetic upgrades, they've been sitting on the market for a long time, there are things that you can do in order to find those cosmetic upgrade houses, see if you can have the visualization or the vision to make that house your own if the price makes sense. Now, if the price doesn't make sense, it's never going to work. But if you're in an area where the price makes sense, that is one of the things that you can do. Number two is interest rates are really high. And we know because these interest rates have risen since 2020, my home that I own currently right now, I bought in 2020. I got super lucky. There was no skill involved here, but I have a 2.6% interest rate. I'm not paying that thing down anytime soon. But for those of you who bought 2 years later, just that alone, you have a 7.5%, maybe an 8% interest rate. And so this can make a house, my same house, 2 years later, I would have to pay double the amount in my mortgage. And so this is one of those areas that is really, really important to understand. One is you can do something like a rate buy down. And David, you probably have done this a number of different times, but you can ask the seller to do a permanent rate buy down or a temporary rate buy down. Both of those, I love those options. And if it's your job to ask, it is the seller's job to say no, but you always should be asking for this kind of stuff because this is going to help reduce your overall cost in the house because interest payments are a huge thing when it comes to total cost of ownership. And this is a big, big number that I want everybody to know when they buy a house is total cost of ownership. And so when they look at this, you can say, okay, well, if I reduce this interest rate, that saves me thousands and thousands of dollars every single month. And what if I took those thousands of dollars every single month that I'm saving and I invested them or I put them towards the things that I actually love to do? This is back to spending on things that you actually value. And so you can do stuff like that where you can reduce the overall cost of the home. Now, how many sellers are going to agree to this? Well, it depends. How motivated are they? And if you're looking for those motivated sellers out there, this could be really, really something that is enticing for them. Or maybe if it's someone who just put their house in the market, they may not be as enticed. So then what do we look for? We look for houses that have potentially been on the market for a long period of time. Maybe they've been sitting there and they could be sitting there because they're very stubborn and they don't want to move their house price. And or they could be sitting there and now you just hit them at the perfect time where they're like, I can't take this anymore. I got to sell this house and I got to get out of here. And so really that is another great option is to look at some of these and try to find houses that have been on the market for a long period of time, come back, start to make offers on some of those houses if you are really interested in them. Now, one thing I did, and the reason why, David, why I have my real estate license is, and this is a luxury I have, but anybody out there who has a real estate license could do this too, is I used to make a ton of different offers. Now, I would tick off a lot of agents when I would do this, but I would make a ton of different offers on a price that just worked for me. Whatever the price was that worked for me. Sometimes it was 20% off, sometimes it was 15% off. And I would get rental properties based on doing that, and I would just make a volume of offers. And I actually figured out a formula to know how many offers I had to make in order to get one accepted. And so when I did this, I was doing this more so for real estate investing, but you can do this as a homeowner if you have your license. It's a lot harder to get another agent to do this, but that is another creative way to kind of look at this. And then one last thing that I'll add, David, and you could tell me, I'm sure you have even more ideas than I do, but one last thing that I'll add is I love the idea of mortgage assumption. So if you look for someone who just can't handle their mortgage anymore, they can't handle the cost of the mortgage, maybe they're just in underwater, they're house poor based on their personal financial situation. Well, this is something where you can find people who are just willing to, hey, I just need to get out of this house. I need to get out of this mortgage. I will give you the mortgage. I will assign the mortgage to you. You take over the payments. And really, that is a fantastic way to find a house as well. I've done this in the real estate investing side, but you can also do this on the personal residence side as well.
Yes, all of those techniques have been discussed here. We had a mortgage assumption specialist. He's what I call one of my unicorns. He's been doing this out in Colorado, and it's incredible. It does most of the time. It ends up being for the investors, but there have been a few times where first-time home buyers have been able to benefit and use that as well. What we're spending a lot of time talking about at the end of 2025 and here through 2026 is, unfortunately, when you go to your average real estate agent or your average lender, they are well below average.
Yep.
And and that means they don't understand all the creative potential options out there. And so we're talking a lot about low down payment options. We're talking about using the seller credits to cover the closing costs, or as you said, to use as a mortgage buy down. Yeah, I had an interview with someone the other day who, in her particular area with this particular lender, she got a 15-1 adjustable rate mortgage. Wow. And, adjustable rate mortgages, they definitely have the things that you need to be cautious of. And you better know what you're doing and not just jump on it because it's a low. But for her, it worked out great. It's a first home. She's moving in 7 to 10 years for sure. And so we're always trying to explore the different options. One of the things that I'm fighting right now, I understand that there are a lot of people out there who have fear of this market. And I always talk about low inventory. Don't worry, it's not going to crash. We're 4 to 6 million homes behind. And, the most recent data here in February of 2026 is that it's going to stall and be flat. But even if 1 million homes came on the market tomorrow, prices wouldn't drop 20% because there are 1 million buyers that are ready to rock.
Yeah.
Before you and I had a chance to talk, I went back and I was very interested in one of your earlier episodes. I believe it was December of last year, was buying a house versus investing in the S&P. And this is the argument that I have to have all the time with people. And I should call it more of an intellectual debate. Because if someone's talking about putting $60,000 down on a $300,000 home versus investing $60,000 for 30 years, of course it's going to be better if you're looking at just that investment. The problem I'm having right now is people are saying, David, I'm not going to buy until rents are more expensive than a mortgage. So if someone doesn't want to pay an extra $500 or $600 or $700 a month, how do you see that mathematically for the next 10 years for them?
Here's how I look at buying a house. And this is really the most important number when it comes to, I think every single person should be educated on this. And you are so right, because the realtors that are out there, no offense to any realtors listening right now. And if you're listening to this podcast, you are most likely trying to get a financial education. And that is really, really powerful. And the lenders out there as well. The reason why I got my license was I was a real estate investor and I was so sick and tired of realtors telling me I couldn't do certain things that I just went and got my license so I could make my own offers. And so this is really the most important thing that I think most people need to understand is when you try to run the numbers on buying a house versus renting versus investing those dollars, you just first need to understand total cost of ownership. And my biggest argument overall is that most people do not run the numbers on the biggest overall purchase that they will ever make. And so total cost of ownership, nobody has never heard of this before, is going to factor in a number of different things. First, it's going to factor in your purchase price, your down payment, those types of things. But in addition, it's going to be, what are the closing costs on the house? What are the additional, what is the interest rate? What is the loan amount? Those types of things. But secondarily, and this is the one that most people forget about, is the maintenance cost, the capital expenditure costs. What are those costs going to be? What are the costs to fix things? What is your HOA cost? I would argue your taxes, and I would argue that your insurance, you are actually paying even when you rent a house because you are paying that to your landlord. Your landlord has to cover those things. So you're just covering those things already in your rent. But those are two other factors that you want to know. Sure.
I'm interrupting you because that fact is so important. When people come to me and they're looking at their full mortgage payment, PITI, the taxes and the insurance, say that again. What are renters still paying for taxes and insurance anyway?
Renters are still paying for taxes and insurance anyway, specifically, definitely taxes and insurance if their landlord is carrying it, but they're already paying that anyway because your landlord has to carry that stuff. And so because they're carrying that stuff, you're just paying for it through your rent. That is overall basically what you're doing. And any real estate investor will tell you that because they see this all the time. You have to raise your rents based on some of the insurance costs, and you have to raise your rents based on the taxes. Otherwise, you're going to become cash flow negative pretty quickly.
When someone is coming in this investor mindset, the thing that we talk about here is a rent replacement strategy. So if someone is looking over 10 years and saying, David, I'm renting for $2,000, it's going to cost me what, like right now on a $300,000 home, or a $400,000 home, maybe you're paying $25,000, maybe you're paying $2,800 a month PITI, and people don't want to pay $500 or $800 more. If they're not in a situation where they can invest money, where do you see using a low down payment option to purchase a home fit into a long-term financial picture for someone who's 30 years old and is thinking, I'm going to wait to save up and buy a home in 5 or 7 years?
The reality is right now, if you look at the wealth in America, the majority of folks who are retired and the majority of wealth in America, they actually hold it in their home. So if you think about wealth as your home being a storage of value, it is a storage that if you're not going to invest your money, if you're not going to invest your money in the market, if you're not going to invest your money somewhere else, you need to put it somewhere. And so a home can be a storage of value where we can look at a lot of people in the US. Now, the only issue with the house is that you have this storage of value, but it's not a cash flowing asset. It's not an asset that you can utilize in retirement to be able to, you could draw down on a HELOC, but then you're going into debt.
Yeah.
And so there's things like that when it comes to this. So for most people, if you're just getting started and you're trying to find a storage of value and you're not going to invest your dollars or some of those other things, then this could be a great option. Now, I am a big proponent, actually, of having a low down payment specifically for first-time home buyers. I don't have an issue with that at all. Where at first, I was saying, oh, you got to put 20% down. You got to make sure that you have that in place. And then I thought back to myself and I said, I didn't put 20% down. In fact, on my first home, I think I put 10% down. And really, in reality, I should have put 3.5% down just because it was one of those areas where the borrowing costs were low during that time frame. And so for folks out there, I have no issue if you want to do a low down payment loan like an FHA or whatever else, and really just take advantage of some of those programs. Now, overall, you just have to make sure that you understand the financial situation around it. So when I talked about running total cost of ownership, then you can figure out what that number is. Because what we don't want is we don't want people to become house poor, meaning we don't want them spending too much of their money on their housing. Otherwise, they're going to be strapped everywhere else. And you cannot thrive ever if you're spending too much on your house. And so typically we have a couple of different rules, and these are getting harder to live by for a lot of folks as the price of real estate is rising. But one of my specific rules, and David, you tell me what you think about this, but one of my specific rules is you need to spend 30% or less of your gross income on housing. I have seen so many people who spend 35, 36, 37% of their gross income on housing. In every single one of those situations, they are fighting with their spouse. And it's usually over the Starbucks that they bought the other day or the lunch that they had the other day. But the real problem is actually they're spending too much on their house. They're spending too much on the big ticket item. That matters so much more than the smaller ticket item. So if you can maintain and think about this in a way where it's 30% or less of your expenses are spent on housing, that is going to be one of the most important factors overall when you want to build wealth. If you are interested in building wealth, that is really, really important. If you want to build wealth and retire early, it's actually even less than that. But 30% or less is our big overall rule, which is why we run total cost of ownership to understand what that number is. And then we can compare it to renting. You can look at the rents in your specific area because obviously this is very, very location dependent. And when you look at the rents in your specific area, you can compare buy versus rent. But at the same time, you want to see, is this a storage of wealth? If it is long-term, and I plan on being in this location, for a decent period of time, it's a great option for some people out there.
When I have the house poor conversation with people, first thing you do is going through a list and finding those things that are important to them. I think a lot of people are just looking at houses as a number. Like they're buying a car or a laptop and they're like, well, I pay $2,000. Why would I pay $28,000? The first thing I tell them is, well, why you would pay $28,000 is because this year you're paying $2,000. At the end of this year, that's $24,000 that has gone towards nothing. The second thing is, if you're paying $800 more, what do you call it? The lifestyle choices. And I always talk about it like, what are the emotional lifestyle benefits that you're getting out of that extra $800 a month? The difference between your apartment and your starter home.
Exactly. Because the difference between those two, the only reason why this matters is if you're not going to invest that extra $800 and put it towards your freedom or your financial future, and you're going to throw it away on frivolous things that you don't really care about and you don't really value, then that is going to be a different situation all in all together. You'd much rather put it towards some sort of wealth accumulation vehicle than just throwing it out in the wind.
And I couldn't agree more. And that's where I get caught a lot of times. And people say, well, it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to buy now. And the whole reason why, I'm giving everything away for free. I'm not a realtor sitting in front of them saying, let's go look at that house. I know it's $600 more than your rent. You can afford it. And so I have a little bit of authenticity here in that I'm just telling everybody, I know exactly why the market has continued to go up, even though it doesn't make sense. It is illogical. Everyone wants prices to go down. Heck, when you bought your first house in 2014, I was selling real estate. In 2014 and 15 and 16, people were so scared because we just had 2008 that they said, I'm not buying, David. I'm waiting. It's going to crash again. And my answer back then is the same answer it is now. No, it's not, because the builders all went bankrupt and we have low inventory. And economics 101, supply and demand. So let me turn that question to this place then. I love what you're saying, and I do agree. Because when you're coming at the full picture, you want people's best financial health. And to me, if someone is saying, I can't afford to buy right now, my rent's $2,000, but this is going to cost me $2,800. Well, if you're not going to be able to save $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over the next 5 years to invest in things, but could you squeeze out $800 a month? Great. Then we go back to what you talked about, time in the market. The earlier they purchase that first house and they have a rent replacement strategy, the longer it goes. When I have people that are in high cost of living areas and they're paying $3,500 a month in mortgage or $4,000 a month in mortgage, which I have a lot of people, different places in the country, whether, Chicago can get really pricey, definitely San Francisco and New York for sure. And they're like, David, we're not going to buy a house because I want to make sure I save 20% down so it can be cheaper. My discussion with them is $4,000 a month is going to cost you $48,000 a year. The difference between 10% down and 20% down, even including that nasty PMI, which is not nasty, might be $600 or $800 a month. So is it $48,000 a year versus $600 times 12? That becomes the discussion. And then most importantly, they're also going to have time in the market.
Yep.
When someone comes to you who's a good earner and has a decent chunk of money, but they don't own a property, but they eventually want to own a property, where do you coach as far as investing versus home ownership?
So if they are someone who is a good earner and they have cash on hand, the big thing we want you to do first is you got to have that emergency fund. So you got to have that SWAN number in place.
Yes.
That is one of the most important things to protect yourself and to make sure that is in place. The next thing I really want you to do is, especially if you have a corporate job or something like that, is I want you to get your employer match. The reason for this is, and this is a really, really important note, is because your employer match, typically your employer is going to match at a certain percentage or 100% of what you put into your 401k or whatever those other options are. And if you do that, that is a 100% rate of return. And so this is free money. I love free money. I know David loves free money. And so this is one of those things where we are looking at this as that's the next logical step. Then making sure that we look at our retirement and we're taking care of our retirement. There's a number of different factors that we could talk through on, how to run the numbers on that and all those different things, but making sure we're starting to get some of those dollars invested and working. And once you get your dollars invested and working up front, then we look at, well, hey, if I have extra left over, now it's time to make sure that we are saving for future you, for future us. Now, if you're not going to invest your money, let's just get real here. A lot of people out there do not invest their dollars. And if your decision is I'm not going to invest my money right now. Instead, I am going to just spend this money on whatever else. I have an extra $800 every single month. I'm just going to spend it on whatever I want. I'm going to go out to brunch. I'm going to go do these other things. And instead, you have zero wealth accumulation happening whatsoever. Then that would be a good time to look at purchasing a home, because that is the time frame where as long as you run total cost of ownership and understand how much this is going to cost you overall in comparison to your income, that is a good time to look into that as well. But for most people, I would rather them get started investing, and then after they have that baseline started so that they can fund future them, they can fund their retirement, they can fund financial freedom, which I think most people value most, then they have this option to go ahead and start saving for a house, whatever else you want to be doing. And that's the big key that we look at. And for most of our students and people who look at kind of the stuff that we do, they can do both. We find ways for them to do both, even if they don't make a lot. And that's the really, really powerful thing, is once they get intentional with their spending, you can do both. But it's figuring out how to get intentional with this.
That is my favorite thing that, every time you and I have chatted is the both and mentality. And taking the fear out of it. We joke on this show as well. I have the same budgeting problem too. I call it the B word on this show. And people think I mean something else, but that's not it. But there is an old mentality. And I think it's great that there are people like you who are approaching things from a mental health standpoint first. That goal of financial freedom for your life is not just about, well, don't be a dummy. Take 20% of your money and put it into that. That way you can retire. When people follow the coaching that you give, we're not talking about a retirement at 65. We're coaching a lot right now. People will be so excited, never thought they could buy a house. And then they bought a house. And then I'm like, cool. So that took you 5 months to save up for a low down payment. What if we did the exact same thing? And they're like, David, I can't handle another 5 months like that. I'm all, cool. Do it over 5 years. One of my missions here is that everybody keeps their first home. It will create such a different level of wealth for people. And understanding how that first home can be an investment, but also understanding the ease that they can invest with the systems that you are bringing to people. I just think it's such an important, there are ways you can go through life without feeling like you're sacrificing or depriving yourself of anything. by actually looking at what you have and choosing what you want to do. So I appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Absolutely. You can find me on any social media. I'm at Master Money Co. And then the Personal Finance Podcast is our show where we talk about all things personal finance, from wealth building to investing to real estate to everything else there. And if you ever want help from me, we have something called Master Money Academy, which is basically a community of people where we give you step-by-step exactly what to do with your personal finances and a step-by-step plan. And so we take you through that. We do weekly live coaching calls with me and the entire community. We do small groups with people who are working on the same common goal. So like for people who are looking to buy their first house, we have small groups for people who are just looking to do things like that, where they can work on their common goals together, keep each other motivated. We share all of our financial wins. And there's nothing else really like that out there. There's not an area where you can kind of talk about money openly with people. But in Master Money Academy, that's what we tried to create. And so that's what we do there. And so would love to see anybody there as well.
I love it. And my How to Buy a Homies, you guys know, I don't do sponsors. I had to reach out to Andrew randomly and go, hey, bud, I'm listening to your stuff. I like it. Will you come on my show? So this is just me passing on someone who I think is really working to help with the same mission that we have here. And I just asked him to come on the show. I've been listening to the podcast. It's been great. Caused some really interesting conversations with my wife. You know, here I am, the guru guy telling people how to buy houses. I'm supposed to know all this stuff, but I do more learning now than I did in my 20s and 30s, and it's created such a better life for me, and I'm so excited. So, Andrew, I really, really appreciate it. And so what's next for you and the Money Academy? Or the Money Market Academy? Wait, what is it? I'm supposed to be
Master Money Academy.
Master Money. See, I told you, not a sponsor. I just said, dude, come on my show. So
exactly. So yeah, what's next? So the big thing for us is we are trying to create, like I said at the beginning, my goal is to create 1 million millionaires. And so like we're trying to give people the financial education and the knowledge so that they know what to do forward. But really what we try to coach people on, and if you haven't noticed thus far, this is the big thing for us, is your money psychology. I think 90% of finance is just understanding your money psychology, and the other 10% is head knowledge. And so understanding how to think about money, understanding your emotions around money, how you were raised around money, that is a really, really important thing. And once you realize that your mental health is a huge factor in just even how you spend your money, how you save, how you invest, how you think about financial decisions, that is the most powerful thing. And so we try to take that angle with everything that we do.
I love it. We had someone with a PhD, a doctorate in psychology, who came on the show, and I interviewed her, and she was like, oh my God, Kate, my unicorn realtor and my unicorn lender, I told them afterwards, I'm like, you should all be therapists. And I loved it, because when you start thinking about things in the mentality of the client first, it just opens up so many more doors. So Andrew, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, David. This was an incredible conversation. I truly, truly enjoyed it.
Thank you. I can't thank Andrew enough for bringing in his wisdom. You guys know I feel your pain, especially now in 2026. We're trying to figure out the best ways that you can reduce the stress and anxiety, the confusion and the overwhelm with buying a home and saving money. That's where you need to get an extra level of expertise. And Andrew brings great skills, tips, and strategy. And I'm really, really appreciative that he came on the show today. If you want more free information about anything regarding the first-time home buying process, go to howtobuyahome.com. Everything you need is there. We'll see you next time, and remember, you can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuyahome.com to get started.